welcome back. This is a video to do with coping. So, in relation to coping, there's a few acronyms that stand out, which is like the 5 main habits, which is look well ahead, move your eyes, spot problems, keep space, be seen. LARDA, which is look, assess, decide before you act. There is the acronyms which can hopefully help you with your driving in relation to coping in situations. Trying to cope with situations, I've often seen most situations, students, when they drive, things happen that can sometimes cause problems in relation to dealing with more than one problem. A thing that can stand out sometimes is that we can't multitask. Now, in relation to multitasking, multitasking is fairly impossible. As far as multitask goes, it's a bit of a myth. The way that multitasking tends to be, sort of misinterpreted, is that we can achieve moving between one task to another task quite quickly. So between moving to one task to another task, two tasks are perhaps quite easy to cope with, which can appear to be multitasking. But we can switch between one task quite quickly to another. Can't do two things at once. Now, as far as it goes with 3 tasks, now that's when it can become overwhelming. So there's a few videos that I just want to illustrate a couple of ways that you can use some techniques, some of these acronyms that might help you in relation to coping in situations. But the main things that we need to think about is what can we see? So what can you see? What can you really expect to happen? Sometimes ask yourself, what can't you see around that problem? Like behind one hazard could be another. The situations that we have with multitasking, when you have one problem and you can't cope with just 3 things at once, you need to be ready to slow down and stop. So when you actually do have it becoming more overwhelmed, then think of it as a volume button. Like when you're in a situation where there's a lot of things that are happening at once, we can hopefully turn the volume down on a situation where it's a bit loud. So when situations become a bit overwhelming, it's a bit of a loud situation with lots of things that are happening at once. Try and think about how you could turn the volume down. It'd be great if you had a pause button, but that would be very difficult to try and pause some situations. But what we could do is be ready to slow down and stop. And that is a good way to deal with most hazards. So safety. You should put safety above all else. This means having a real concern, not only for your own safety, but also for road users, those including the most vulnerable, those walking and riding. Expect other people to make mistakes, so be ready to slow down and stop, even if you think you have priority. Never assume that other roads will follow the rules. They may break them either deliberately or accidentally. Remember, your safety lies mainly in your own hands. The better control your vehicle and road space, remember, the safer you'll be. Defensive driving is a good one. Defensive driving is based on effective observations and good anticipation and control. It inspires questioning the actions of all roads and being prepared for the unexpected so as not to be taken by surprise. Defensive driving involves awareness, planning, anticipating, staying in control, but also dealing with consideration to responsibility, care, and consideration and courtesy to other drivers or other incidents that could develop. So sometimes it might be, a good way to think about this would be another page that goes into another way of anticipating things about traffic lights. So hope we can see that. So in relation to traffic lights, it's a traffic light that could suddenly change. So we need to ask ourselves how long it's been on green for, how many vehicles are already waiting on the other side, the other junctions or lights. They could change. They work with sensors, so if it senses that there's a gap between you and the other vehicle, and it's a large gap, it could trigger the sensor to change in another direction. So the way that it works is that it senses movement. So if it senses that there's a big gap in your flow, things can change quite quickly. So we need to ask ourselves, can we stop physically? The laws of physics, if we're that close to it that we cannot stop, we'll have to keep going. But also dealing with what's behind. So when we approach our green, check your mirror, just be assessing in case it was to change. Large vehicles and motorcycles take much greater distance to pull up. So if you stop, would they be able to stop in the same space? Don't try and beat the traffic light by accelerating, or wait until the last moment to brake, because late and harsh brake can lead to loss of control. But sometimes when it comes to situations where you've got behind one hazard could be another, behind one parked obstruction could be another hazard. This could be when you're pulling out of a junction and there's a vehicle maybe you know, sort of on this situation where you've got this bus. So if you're emerging out of that junction with this red car, when you're that red car coming out, we just make sure we look to the left. So if you were the blue car, for instance, if you were going round this obstruction, we need to anticipate that the vehicle at the junction might not see us, and an incident could result. But either way, there's lots of many things that could happen in that situation. We've got the pedestrians here and the cyclist that you're following, and the vehicle that's maybe coming from another turn that may have left its signal on for a previous direction. So it might be showing its intentions to turn, but then might not turn. So what we need to think about is that if you're travelling too fast, you're not able to cope with all these events at once. This our roads might not be doing anything wrong, can turn a straightforward piece of driving into quite a hazardous situation. So what that basically expands on a little bit is just trying to be thinking about when it gets busy, there's lots of complications, try and be ready to slow down and stop for situations. And the way that we could expand on that is using some acronyms in some of these videos that I'll show you, and then also moving into some moments of anticipation, you know, where you might feel a bit more anxious. Try and turn the volume down, just try and slow it down a little bit, and anticipate those things that could change. Okay.
So bus might stop. Traffic lights, they might change. Bus signalling. What does this mean? Cyclist. Ugh. Oh, it's getting a bit hectic here. More issues ahead. Well, what if the pedestrian walks out, can't move away, stops, bus stopping again? Oh, this is a bit late. Not much I can do about this. What can I see? What can't I see? What can I reasonably expect to happen? Up far in the distance, right middle distance, I can see that there's a traffic light that could change. Oh, bus stop. Look, assess, decide. Right, it seems to be what's behind me. Mirror, signal, position, reduce speed, change gear. Look. Right, I can see that there's more problems ahead. Taking more information. Use that information. Right, give that information. Okay, let's go through what take, use, give information means. It's basically what we do with information. We take information in through our eyes or our ears, and we use it to act on what we actually see, which is give information, which could part be the mirror, signal, position, reduce speed, change gear, look system. Take information. See there's a traffic light. Use information. I can see there's no pedestrians. No need to give. Turning left. Taking information. Now I can see the junction. Give information to those vehicles waiting. What if these vehicles' doors open? What can I see? Pedestrian. Are those traffic lights working? No, no one has priority. Ready to slow down or stop. Oh, that's better. Look, assess, decide before I act.